Our reading comes from the Reverend Christian Harper, and it's called Who is Welcomed? Everybody wants a seat at the table. Blacks, Latinos, Asians, the poor, the disabled, the gays, the lesbians. Where are all the straight, white, moderate men supposed to sit? I'm not prejudiced. I'm just asking. And what table are they talking about? My table only seats 8 comfortably, and I have service for 10. That's it. You just have to wait your turn. Can you imagine if we let anyone sit at our table? Why, we might have to have people who can't tell their salad fork from their dinner fork, or people who eat with their hands. I shudder to think. Anyone is welcome at my table in my home, as long as you don't have grease stains in your clothes and have washed your hands before you touch my silverware. Everyone is welcomed at my table, as long as you don't try to proselytize to me your religion or your politics. And don't get upset when I question yours. After all, it isn't my faith that taught me to eat Jesus and drink his blood. Come on in, I say. But don't make fun of my Pan-African sculptures and paintings mixed with Chinzi Curio precious moments figurines. And if you don't dress up and don't have every hair in place and don't smell too fresh, you are welcome, but don't sit on the good leather or the new futon cover. Here, actually, let me give you a towel. I'm told the outside shower works very well. Everyone is welcomed at my table as long as you sit still and don't wiggle or interrupt the grown folks' conversations. Children should be seen and not heard, and they should dress up in bows and satin as they can entertain us. Don't worry if they aren't talented. It only reflects on your upbringing, not mine. Truth is, I really don't have room for you. Maybe next time. So, who has seen the classic movie? Guess who's coming to dinner? Wave your hands if you have. Oh, a few of you. Okay, I see it. Okay, great, great. Okay, it debuted in 1967, and it was very controversial but timely. It starred Black African American actor, and at the time, the first Black actor to receive an Oscar for a leading role, Sidney Poitier, in a romantic comedy in which he desired to ask the father of his lover for her hand in marriage. She was white and from an upclass, liberal-minded white family. The film was one of the first few films of the time that depicted an interracial marriage in a positive light, as interracial marriages historically had been illegal in most states in America. In fact, when the film was finished, it was still illegal in 17 states, mostly southern states, until until all of the anti-miscegenation laws were struck down by the Supreme Court in Loving versus Virginia that same year. In an interview many years after its release, Sidney Poitier reflected how possible it was to make a film like that in America at the time. He reflected that it was close to impossible. Primarily, he said, people in the industry were not ready for such a film. But in talking to the director, Stanley Kramer, he said, I would like to make a film like this, not because it is going to be sensational, not because it is going to be provocative, but because I am a filmmaker in America, and this is part of America. And if I use this format, I can speak to the humanity in people. To make a long story short, the romantic comedy showed how each person navigated their relationships with each other and their feelings on the matter, eventually bowing to the power of love, including his parents and her mother, with one holdout, her father. However, in an honest exchange between his Black mother and her white father, the father, played by actor Spencer Tracy, was convicted of something. He was reminded that love is love, is love, is love. Before the family adjourned to the dining room for dinner, the father gave a moving monologue saying that although the pair would face enormous problems ahead due to their racial differences, they must find a way to overcome them, and he will approve the marriage, knowing all along he had no real right to stop it. But it was deeper than that. In his message of affirmation, he said, and I quote, "There is nothing, absolutely nothing that your son does not feel for my daughter than I did for Christina, who was his wife for over 20 years, played by his true life partner, Katharine Hepburn. The only thing that matters is what they feel and how they feel for each other. And if it's half of what we felt, that's everything." It was a classic and poignant moment where everyone witnessed with tears in their eyes the power of love that is more powerful than fear, more powerful than prejudice, more powerful than disappointment. Love came to dinner that evening. It left me with a message that in cultivating relationships, honesty and openness are key players. Honesty, authenticity, being true to who you are, who you have become, being honest with your feelings, but open to the power of love, open to the love that you have for yourself, and open to the love for whomever you are cultivating a relationship with. Honesty and openness are key players. And to honor the LGBTQ History Month, African American poet and openly gay man, one of my patron saints, James Baldwin once said, "The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out." Where does that take you? What do you feel or see when you hear that? I'll read that one more time. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out. For me, it speaks to the experience I had in growing up in relation with myself first, and then with others that I care about, and making sure to hold them close in faith that my heart wouldn't be broken by them, to hold them, but also to be held by them in love and care, to hold and be held in authentic reciprocity. Then and only then will I not worry so much about the sea engulfing me and us, and the waves of life splitting us apart and extinguishing the light between us, the flame that we burn in our hearts for each other. Pandemic time is teaching us so many things about relationships. What have you learned? For me, my friendships were weeded out and realigned. I had to prioritize those that were essential over those that were convenient or strategic. Some didn't last, and some didn't grow. Others, with authentic reciprocity, did. Maybe it took a slowing down to realize this. Well, friends, next Monday, in addition to being Indigenous Peoples Day, it is also National Coming Out Day. And I want to tell you a brief story in which I too had a guess who's coming to dinner experience. I was age of 32 years old, and I was bringing someone home to my family dinner for the very first time in my life. It was a Thanksgiving dinner about 11 years ago. I know I just dated me and aged me. Yes, I'm 43, proud of it. But it was a bold and courageous move, as I was essentially coming out to my family as my guest for dinner was not of a different race, but of the same gender, my first boyfriend. 2 years prior, I had resigned as minister in a Black holiness Pentecostal church. I began to live my truth. I joined a UU church and had the audacity of bringing a gay lover to dinner. It was somewhat of a blur, but I believed in the power of love and authentic reciprocity of relationships to get me through that day. For you see, my father is a holiness Pentecostal preacher like I was, and so are two of my sisters. And my brother-in-laws are as well. One of my other brothers, not the in-law, but my natural brother, is retired from the Air Force. And my nieces and nephews were raised in the church just like their parents and I was. A church that believed that my authentic lifestyle was a ticket to hell. At the time, my mother had dementia, so the children were in charge of the planning, the food, and I cannot cook. I still cannot cook, but he could. He made the best baked ziti, and I do have the recipe if anybody wants it. And my family inhaled it. But I can still remember everyone's reaction when I introduced him. My father smiled and shook his hand and even showed him his Hawaiian guitar. My sister smiled and welcomed his contribution to the meal and begged for the recipe. My brother smiled and talked to him as well. All smiles so far. Even my nieces and nephews gravitated to him. I think my nieces thought that he was fine. They all instantly became Facebook friends with him as well. I was shocked and amazed. Was this the power of love? The only holdouts were my brother-in-laws. They did not greet him or talk to him. They both sat on the couch in the den next to each other with their arms folded, looking down when I entered the room. I can tell I was ruining their Thanksgiving. But at least I knew how they really felt. It was hard and sad for me to see, but I did not lose faith in them, as James Baldwin warned. And besides, honesty is a key player. And their honest reactions were key. Now, openness, that's a different story, of which one of them has graduated from. It took 10 years for that to happen. Nevertheless, I expected my whole family to be like them, but they weren't. It was felt amazing. I felt seen, heard, and held for the first time in my life while living my truth. Now I realize that this isn't true for everyone. It seemed like it was easy for me, but it really wasn't. I didn't know what to expect, and I worried that my visit would be short. But years later, it turns out that one of my sisters, I had come out to many years before, had warned everyone weeks prior, guess who Verdis is bringing to dinner? He's bringing his boyfriend, and how do you feel about that? So she did an intervention before I had my surprise. Guess it wasn't a surprise after all. This allowed them time to reflect on their love and care for me, to sit with it and their own feelings. And it wasn't a shock or surprise, but it reminds me of a biblical scripture that I will quote from an inclusive Bible of 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8. And it said, love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous. It does not put on airs. It is not snobbish. It is never rude or self-seeking. It is not prone to anger, nor does it brood over injuries. Love doesn't rejoice in what is wrong, but rejoices in the truth. There is no limit to love's forbearance, to its trust, to its hopes, its power to endure. Love never fails. The verse that really speaks to me is love doesn't rejoice in what is wrong, but rejoices in the truth. That is how we were able to grow in relationship. Religion told them that I was wrong. The community told them that I was wrong. But love rejoiced in my truth. But living and being honest about my truth was no easy feat. It wasn't, as it isn't for many queer people in our society that is still largely against what is deemed abnormal, that is deemed right and wrong, what is deemed sacred. Some never cultivate relationships with their families. Some never even accept themselves. It was difficult as a minister of the gospel to live my authentic self. And in times, it was dark times. But what gave me the audacity, what gave me the courage, what gave me the strength and the power to do so that day? Well, aside from the fact that my boyfriend was fine and could cook, I was first welcomed by a chosen family, my UU family. I was welcomed literally with open arms. The pride banner proudly displaced in front of the church welcomed me. The church ladies during coffee hour affirmed me after hearing where I came from and me awkwardly telling them that my previous faith believed that I was sinful, an evil spirit in me compelling me to live an immoral life of sin and degradation. They held me literally, physically, and whispered affirmations in my ear and told me that nothing was wrong with me, that I was loved and I was safe. They embodied the first principle. They inherit worth and dignity of every person's. We believe that each and every person is important. Not only that, but I was able to go on a journey of healing or self-exploration with the fourth principle, a free and reasonable search for truth and meaning. We believe that each person must must be free to search for what is true and right in life. These principles and living them gave me hope, gave me courage and strength to live my authentic self and heal. It gave me courage to discover what was important and who was important to be held and to hold them close. For if not my biological family, definitely my chosen church family. Unitarian Church of Montpelier, oh my goodness, Montpelier, you are a welcoming congregation. The spirit, that same spirit I felt years ago, I felt here and feel here. I first came to visit for the first time last March, and who knew it would be the last time that we would all be together again, but I felt loved. I felt it, and it was evident. The Black Lives Matter flag blowing in the wind boldly welcomed me. The pride flag blowing in the wind welcomed me. I, this morning, feeling so comfortable yet nervous, but held to be able to share my authentic self with each and every one of you, and your opening to it affirms me and will continue to cultivate our relationship with each other. I know that our heart is breaking at times. I know that things are not the same as they used to be, but as the Reverend Gretchen Haley says, what our faith asks of us, what our faith imagines for us, is that somehow, right at the moment when our heart breaks, we will find our way to see through that heartbreak. We will stay put, not close off, not run away, not hurt back, but keep on being in relationship, doing what we can to repair the world and each other. So let us continue to be honest and open with each other. Let us continue to hold each other in care and support and be held by this community. Let us continue to welcome and affirm everyone who comes our way, and let the spirit and the power of love keep us together and guide the way. Amen. Ashe, and blessed be. Now, please join me in singing the closing hymn, number 170. We are a gentle, angry people. Join in as Bronwyn Fryer leads us this morning.